welcome. My name is Casey Layton. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to tonight's event. It's a great honor for this community college to be hosting this historic community event. Myself, me, as a 20-year resident of this county, this gathering holds a significant place for me as the inaugural Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the college. I'm thrilled, and I want you to you can stand up or wave whatever feels comfortable for you when I mention this group that you might identify as. So I'm thrilled to welcome community members, such as those that maybe helped participate in any of the focus groups or anything like that. Wave your hand, thank you, welcome, community members. Any elected officials that are here this evening? Yeah. And local public employees, administrators, and others that were involved in this project. Yeah. Just fabulous. Go ahead and wave your hand during our fabulous group. Thank you. Hey, let's see you. I think that was wonderful. Well, welcome to this gathering. And I would like to share a very special welcome to my spiritual sister that is in this room. She paved the way for me standing here before you tonight in this moment. And I know she knows who she is. Thank you. As you all can hear, this event is not only important on a professional level, but also on a personal one for me. And as an institution, Clackamas Community College is dedicated to fostering dialogue, learning, and growth. We believe that this space will continue to be a place where diverse perspectives converge and where meaningful conversations lead to positive change. So I'm excited to hear more from our folks here tonight about how we can come together to learn, connect, and explore ways to transform our minds and also transform the community for the better. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to President Tim Cook.
Thank you, Casey. I always dread following you because I never quite have the same energy, but thanks for getting started tonight. Thank you all for being here. As president of Clackamas Community College, it's really an honor for us to be hosting this event, where we really pride ourselves on our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have opportunities to really walk our talk. We want to make sure that we're there front and center. So it's nice that we have facilities and spaces, and really good food that we can sit down and eat. So appreciate y'all being here. You know, our mission statement, really our purpose in being here is to provide equitable education, innovative education, and opportunities for Clackamas County residents. That's why we exist. And in order to do that really well, we always have to be kind of thinking 2, 3, 4 years ahead about what sorts of trends there are around work and where we need to be adding programs, where we need to be adding resources and thinking about that. And in addition to this programs, we need to think about how our county is changing and who lives here in our county and who potentially would come here to need to support. So around 4 years ago, when Martine Pullins, who's sitting back here, came, and I think it was one of the first times we met, we were really talking about ways that we could collaborate, the county and the college could collaborate on diversity and equity. She talked about this Coalition for Communities of Color project and said, you know, this is something that the college would support, the college would be behind. And I remember thinking, this is exactly something we would support, we would be behind, because it's really important to us that we understand who lives here and how we can better support the folks in our community. We have values of belonging, and it's really important to us in addition to our equity work. And so that, you know, makes it even that much more important that we get there. So I really appreciate that invitation. I can't do this 4 years ago, I really can. And the fact that we got to participate in this, and I'm super excited now to see the results, probably like all of you. I will say, this looks like a textbook. If I have a little anxiety, it's just working out like it's going to be an exam at the end tonight or something we're going to respond to. But I'm sure that we'll get the answer at some point. We won't have to take anything. So So again, on behalf of the Clackamas City Hall, welcome. Please feel free to make yourselves at home while you're here. We love having people on our campus and just really happy to have you here tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Pearson.
All right, well, I'm Gary Smith, the County Administrator at Clackamas County. Thank you so much to Clackamas Community College for hosting this event tonight. Dr. Cook and Casey and your team, phenomenal. Please give them a round of applause. I've been the County Administrator 5 years ago at Clackamas County. As a new county administrator, one of my department directors at the time, Sue Hilda, the Director of Public and Government Affairs, advised me, Gary, Clackamas County should really collaborate with the Coalition of Communities of Color and do a research justice study as they've done in Washington County, which it just completed at that time. And following Sue's advice, I said, let's do it, let's try it. And thanks to 3 different boards of county commissioners since 2020, we have moved forward on this story. And certainly Martine Collins and Cece Leonard and Maria Nagion, who worked on the county's equity team at the time, helped make sure this study got off to an excellent start. And when we decided this county as a partner and paid for the study, it was almost all the cities in Clackamas County and several other community partners. I'm going to read the names of the cities and the community partners. And if you're from that city or community partner, would you please stand and raise your name and stay standing? Because this took a whole community to support this work. And I and the county are super grateful for them. Here we go. The cities: Happy Valley, Wilsonville, Sandy, Canby, Estacada, Gladstone, Tualatin, Lake Oswego, Westland. Please stand. I'm sitting over here. Milwaukee, Oregon City, and the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, Portland General Electric, Clackamas Community College, and Metro. Thank you so much for your support. Coalition of Communities of Color have been a phenomenal partner. I am so grateful. We are so grateful and impressed with your incredible work. The team led by Marcus Mundy, the president and CEO of the Coalition of Communities of Color. Marcus, would you please share a few words?
Thank you, Jared. All right, I got a promotion. I'm just a mere executive director. I'm CEO. Thank you, and thank you, Gary. Thank you, President Cook and Casey, for having us here on campus. I have a word here, copies for the Congress and talk about that. So, as Gary mentioned, when this project began, we had different county commissions. We had not been shut down for COVID. We had a different president. Oregon was still in the Pac-12, and 2 of my kids were still living at home. So, things have changed. We live in a world where, of course, the only constant is change. This report was born with that thought in mind, with an eye to a shared and better future. And actually, now only one of my kids live at home. The Coalition of Communities of Color is just very proud, so proud, to share the results of these many months of years of research and community engagement, led by the mighty brain trust of our Research Justice Institute team, all of whom are present tonight. Andres, Mira, Tanya, Dallas, Colette. They all strive to provide Clackamas the information, insights, and inspiration necessary to make each resident of this county truly feel as if they truly belong. And that's embraced by the title, but it's also how they approach their work. I said that the only concept was change. I think I'd like to omit that a bit. The other concept about this project was the steadfast support we received from, well, basically everybody here just mentioned, from Clackamas County, all of the cities that helped find their way to helping us out. Clackamas Community College, our corporate benefactors, PG and others. Metro was a piece of it with another one of our government partners. But above all, and not enough of you stood at the beginning, the community that supported us, that engaged with us, that gave us the information we needed to find out about this county, to chronicle what you told us, you translated into this amazing document. And The plan is to use it for the benefit of everybody in Clackamas County, so. We appreciate the community for the talent and time that you gave us, and really for whom this was undertaken. This report uplifts the many strengths and the sometimes challenges that exist in Clackamas County. But it offers a pathway to improving that, the quality of life and the opportunity for all. So just to wind up in closing, I'd just like to simply thank the entities again, the individuals that made this concept of a plan that they came up with, a living document, an ongoing resource, and a really good start. I'm not gonna go through the list again, but I really appreciate every community partner, every corporate partner, every government partner, everybody that adds to this place. So no further ado, I'm gonna pass it off to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Clackamas Community College, Clackamas County. I have to just also, say the names again of, our team and CC and Maria, who were our thoughtless hours of thought partners and supporters and allies and helping us really make good connections here. This would have never happened without your thoughtful dedication throughout all these years, so we're so grateful for that. And especially the community members, getting to know community members from all across Clackamas County is no easy feat. It's a very big county. We spend a lot of time doing that, so thank you, community members, for sharing your views with us. We hope that we do proud today with what we present and also what we got in Clackamas County. So I wanted to just say the reports, just a quick note on the reports here. All of the funders, if you please just come talk to me before we leave today, because you will get a copy today, and we'll get you more copies. We were just, by the grace of God, we're able to get our 25 today, and we want to make sure the steering committee members get some, but please come see me, we'll make sure the funders get copies, and then we'll be putting on our website, folks would like to order more physical copies if you'd like some. But of course, the digital ones are on there and they're free. We'll also be translating the report into Spanish and releasing a full Spanish report as well. That will just take a little bit longer, but the county has been supporting us with that. So thank you, county, for allowing us to have the report in Spanish as well. I don't have a folder. Yes, and please keep eating. There's a lot of food, so don't be shy to get up and eat. This is a community event, you know, deformalize these things. So help yourself, please. I also wanted to just talk. There we go. Agenda, yeah, perfect. All right, so we're going to spend some time with you today talking about sort of the big pieces of the report that are really, really important. There's a lot in here, we put a lot of time and energy into these bits, so you gotta read it. I mean, that's where you're gonna really, the stories, the truths, the desires are really gonna come alive to you, but I'm gonna share a little bit about how we'll do Q&A today, because we'd like to spend a good amount of time tonight taking questions. If we don't get to answer all of your questions, then we will do that at a later time, so please write down any inquiries you have. And I'll go over that in a second. We're going to talk about key elements of the process. A research study is a little different than a traditional research study. And even as you open this book, you may think, this looks different than any other research report I've done. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what it takes to do this kind of research and what we did over the years. Then I'm going to pass it over to Mira, who is our lead author on the report, and we'll talk a little bit about the belonging framework, so how we sort of oriented ourselves toward belonging, thanks to our steering committee members. And then we're going to talk about the case studies, which is really the heart of the research, which was the community engagement events led by the steering committee members. So Mira will tell you more about that. And then the calls to action, which the reason for doing a research justice study report is to be really clear on what needs to shift. What has to change? And these are not things that are based off of one community engagement event. It's not things based off of what's possible for one institution, with our equity agenda. This is what broadly 4 years of community, relationship building and engagement has led to us to say, these are things in particular that communities of color in this county want to see happen. So we're gonna share those with you, and then we're gonna end with next steps. And that's the exciting part, because this is just the beginning, y'all. I know it's been 4 years, but now the real work begins. What do we do now to mobilize and organize to see these things actually realized? All right. Okay, so Q&A, you have these stickies, and I see you all on paper, you can use that as well. We will have Kanye and Dallas, Dallas over there. You see them in the back waving their hand. They will be the ones that you can hand your questions to. So throughout this time, something that sparks your brain, have an idea, anything you want to know, write it down. There's no stupid question. And we will do our best to answer as many as we can tonight. And then, like I said, we will get back to you for the rest. Try to put one question for thinking of. We are humans, and we still have to try to understand your writing. So please do that for us. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about these key elements of the process. Not a lot of text in my slides, I want you to look at me. But I really want to go through these processes, like I said, because this is a very different approach to research than what most of us are used to. Even what I was trained to do as a sociologist or here as an anthropologist. This is a different orientation of thinking about how we generate knowledge, how we generate evidence, and how we really focus on what we want for the future, not just what's possible or what some people can do right now. So I want to start with understanding the landscape. So in 2020, we began the environmental scan. I don't know if you all have seen it, raise your hand if you've seen the environmental scan that we did. I see a few hands. Okay, good. I'm bringing this back up because you should go back to that. That is also a resource in addition to this report, because one of the things that we've learned in community research is, communities are really tired of you asking them the same questions that you already asked them, year after year after year. So we were really intentional by saying, what's already out there? What have the counties and cities already heard? What research has already been done, right? We also knew that Clackamas County is very different than our previous work in Washington County. We did this, right? That we heard loud and clear. Clackamas County is urban, rural, suburban, and wild, right? And it spans all of those different territories and community, and our communities, especially this one, exist throughout all of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But that was something that we had to understand. What does wild mean? What does suburban mean? Are these boundaries real, right? What are the differences for our communities there? We spent a lot of time analyzing the data that we found that was available, as well as the listening session data. If y'all remember back in 2020 when everyone was hosting listening sessions to hear what the community had to say. To be honest with you, and this isn't to talk with counties, almost every jurisdiction, what happened to those listening sessions? Where's the change from that data? I say that's why I didn't go back to look at the environmental scan, because there's a lot of that evidence that we've heard from the community. The difference was that was embedded in the community in the sense of a long process where we said, what does it really mean? And some of the things, areas that came up in the environmental scan were around representation and leadership. We have some examples of what that looks like, but what does that really look like? What does it really take to do that? In which ways, in which sectors? In the environmental scan, you'll find more about education and training, BIPOC-informed policy, access and services, multicultural and multilingual communications and engagements, and community support and connection. These were all areas that were evidence that already existed. We didn't have to engage a single community member to know these truths from our community. So I encourage you to go back there, and I wanted to really impress upon you how prepared we wanted to be before we even began this process. So that was step one, understanding the landscape. Step two was relationship building. I know this sounds kind of silly, but let me tell you, we spent an entire year relationship. We had over 100 Zoom calls,
Way more, I think.
more than that, 200 across the county with organizations, with institutions. We spend a lot of time with data hackers, that's sort of our term of saying people who work with data in certain positions, commented on those interviews. And we said, what data are you using? What data informs your decision making about your communities? What data do you wish you had? Right? So we asked all those questions to really start getting a sense of what already was available, what people had, and let me tell you, it wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of data that was informing much of any decision making out in the county. How many data? The 50 some?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So, you know, we spent a lot of time with those folks. We also spent time listening to the study funders. We wanted to know, why did you fund this report? What are you hoping to get out of this? What are you already doing, currently, in your equity work? We talked to a lot of the CEOs, trying to get a sense of who are the CEOs, where are they located? Do they really serve Clackamas County, or do they really serve Multnomah County with like 10% of Clackamas County? There's a lot of that happening too, right? So we were really trying to make sense of who is here in the county, who's really doing the heavy lifting in this work. And then we also spent time with biological employees across the county, trying to understand how are you working in your organization? Are you being treated fairly? Are you being heard and seen? Are there opportunities for you to advance and grow? So all of this relationship building was really important because a lot of what we learned was like the communities here are disconnected. There was so many people doing equity work. There's people on our steering committee who are not here tonight. You know why? They're working. They're doing things in community, not because they didn't want to make it be here, but because that's how stretched the leaders of color are in this town. And it was so hard to even fill a steering committee of 12 people. Because everyone was like, this is amazing, we would love to work with you, but I can't. I cannot have one more thing to do. We met people who said, I've lived here for 20 years. I don't know another person from my race who had this. 20 years living in Happy Valley, not knowing anyone else from your community, how to go to Washington County to worship and to play and to eat. So that was hard for us to sort of say, how do we lead a research study when this is the reality in a very big county, people very maxed out, people very disconnected from each other. But very committed. We heard that loud and clear. Even though all those are true, people in Clackamas County were here to make this work happen. So that was really important for us, and that's how we built the steering committee, and that's how we built relationships and trust. And it is here. The next part was around secondary data collection, and primary data collection, yes. So, secondary data collection, all that's the data that was collected by us, so there's something else. The data that you'll find in this report are historical sources, their administrative data that exists within the county, amongst the metro region, in the state and nationally. There's population level data, and we took a lot of that information to really identify the differences between urban, suburban, rural, and wild, so that we could present numbers of our communities, languages spoken in those regions, and also really just give a sense that this is very diverse. But there are so many different people from so many different backgrounds speaking so many different languages in this county. And you probably wouldn't know that if you looked at most of our organizations or most of the languages that exist across the county. So we wanted to really put that out there and say, hey, guess what? There's a lot of these populations out there. Reach out to them, engage with them. We also collected primary data collection. So this is mostly focused on the experiences, the needs, and the desires of community members. So that last part is really important. I think we hear a lot about experiences and needs, right? We often ask community, what do you need? How is that for you, right? That's important. We need to know how we're doing. We need to know how to do it a little bit better. But when it comes to desire, that's like, what do you really want? What's the world you want to live? What's the world you want your kids to grow up? What's the world you want newcomers into our community to experience when they show up in this county? And we heard so many stories about so many people of color who moved to this county to be more safe, to feel that have more access to better resources and schools, we heard these stories over and over, why community members move here. And then get here and realize that there's a lot of work to do. So, the primary data collection was really about identifying those community desires. And we did that with our adult steering committee and the student steering committee. Because we heard loud and clear, the youth are organized in this county, and we were blown away by how organized the youth are here and how passionate they are for inclusion, for belonging, for safety, to be teenagers. I'll just say quickly, I remember we did several Clackamas here, at the center just around the corner here on campus. And I'll never forget one of the youth who said, I'm 17 years old, I shouldn't be here on a Saturday talking to adults about equity. You know what my wife says sometimes? They're hanging out. They're being teenagers. And I'm here telling elected officials. So that was super powerful and impressionable, and a lot of those truths are in this report, so you'll be able to hear and think more about what that means. In addition to the student and adult steering committee, like I said, we did spend time with CEOs, and we got a good understanding of what it was like to work with the county, and what it was like to work with the equity office, and what they needed, and how that we can improve the work they were doing. We also talked about BIPOC employees, about what's working and what isn't working. And of course, I think a little bit about the funders, but we had three or four engagement meetings with all the funders, and we walked through, what they wanted to know, what they were doing, what was working, what wasn't working. And that was all really important to sort of set the context of what everyone was sort of positioned in. And Mira's gonna talk a lot more about this later, but even though we knew about what all these various groups wanted, it was really the steering committee that led us towards the questions that we went after in the research. But we also did our best to try to respond to those questions, respond to those concerns, provide data and other evidence in the report that did speak to those equity concerns that are understood as well. Okay, and the last part here that I'll say is about the co-construction of the calls to action. So, a lot of times researchers do the research and they come up with their best ideas, because they're experts, right? And they know how to do this. So they're gonna say, this is what you need to do. That's not how research ethics goes. We went back and forth over months and months, and we went through all of the data that was collected. We went through various activities to say, what did you learn? What needs to change? How do we do it? And we asked, what can you learn to do? What can community do? That was really clear. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but it became very obvious to us that community was ready to move. Community was no longer sitting here idly waiting for the government to save them or to engage them. They were saying, hey, we're moving. We've always been moving, and we're getting more traction, and we're going to keep going. But also, there was a lot of questions about the dominant. Why does this happen? Why are we being supported this way? How can we bring along these folks? Right, so we also had a lot of questions for the dominant, and that became really clear to us, and led us to our belonging framework, which I'm going to pass it on to Mira. And she's going to start off from that point, sort of where we began with the steering committee to help us understand the different types of questions and the different directions of research. So thank you for your patience with me. I know that's a lot of talking, but that's what it takes to do this kind of work. Years and years of community building, thoughtfulness. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that this report provides a diversity of data. You're not going to look in here for the best statistical measure to advance belonging or equity. That's not in there. You're not going to because there's one statistical approach to do that, right? There is a lot of approaches, there's a lot of truths, there's a lot of strategies, and all of them should be considered together. All of them should be accounted for. And I think that's what community wants more than anything. Is to say, yeah, you may not be able to do all the things we want, but acknowledge that you heard us. Acknowledge that this is what we want. And then be honest about what we can and can't do, and let's partner together and do that. So we heard a lot of that and really excited for Mira to share them. So I'll stop talking. I'll pass it over to Mira.
Hey y'all, I'm not as coordinated as somebody, so I'm gonna use the stand. Give me a second.
All right.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so good to be here with all this tense, oh, I can't even, I feel like I'm probably maybe gonna cry because I'm just like. I'm just so excited and so moved that we as a team and as a community have worked together to produce this, and like I said, this, even though it took 4 years, this is really the beginning, and I'm so excited to not talk actually, and have a discussion with you all about what moving all of this work forward can look like, because there's a lot of work to do. And I think what I'm gonna share is gonna illustrate both that there's a lot of work to do, and there's also a lot of great work already being done, and there's a lot of energy. So thank you all for being here. Okay, I'm gonna start with. And I went to the very end. I'm really not nervous, but. Yeah, I'm performing right now. Okay, belonging has been central to the work that we've been doing with community, with our steering committee members, in really driving this work forward. So, I know there are some copies of the report on your tables. Chapter 2 of the report, I believe, is really about leading with belonging, where we talk a lot about approaches to belonging, but really how this research process that others talked about really informed our understanding of belonging, which really means how the community, Clackamas County community members informed our understanding of belonging. And with that understanding, we co-constructed with our steering committee members what we're calling the dual belonging framework. And it's a framework, right? So it's something that guided us throughout this process, throughout this long process. And you'll see sorry. Okay. So you'll see that like there's two kind of sides of the dual belonging framework. The framework is actually like presented as a table in the report. We're kind of simplifying things here. But there's two basically perspectives that the dual belonging framework articulates. And one is the community perspective, right? So talking about how communities lead the way towards creating the conditions for belonging. And then on the other side is how can dominant institutions and actors create and support the conditions for belonging. So these are the two fundamental questions that were really driving a lot of our collaborative work together with steering committee members as well as with other partners. We wanted to really understand what do these two perspectives mean? What are the questions that we need to answer? What are the data that we need to gather to answer these questions, or to get more insight into these questions? So the dual belonging framework really guided us as we worked through a lot of the more researchy bits of this process to really think about what are the questions that we want to ask, how do we want to collect data in order to answer those questions. And then this framework is really what then led to our steering committee members venturing into the community to collect their own data. And that then became the case study, which I'll talk about shortly. So you can see how this belonging framework really drove the process. But we didn't want to only create a process or a framework that was useful for driving research. We wanted to create, from our learnings, a framework that anyone in this room could use. You don't have to be a researcher, right? In any capacity that you're working or moving work or moving things forward in Clackamas County, we wanted to create a framework that you all could consult and use and, use to hold yourself or the dominant accountable with. So that's the belonging assessment framework. And what this means is, let me back up a second. It is notoriously difficult to measure, assess, and track belonging. What is belonging? I bet if I asked every one of you what is belonging to you, everyone will have a completely different answer. Or what's likely going to happen is that you'll all have an answer that's very specific to your context or specific to what it is you're thinking. When do I belong? What are the spaces that I belong? Who are the people that I feel like I belong to? Right, it's really, really hard to measure because it's so, it wants it so personal. And in another sense, what creates the conditions of unbelonging are structural. And we really need to dive into unpacking those areas that create conditions of unbelonging so that we can work towards creating conditions for belonging. And this assessment framework can really help us break that down. So we broke down the actual word belonging into 3 parts. B, which is why it kind of sectioned off with parentheses. B, belonging, and then putting B and belonging together, belonging. So think about B, right? Like it's a present tense. It's asking you to evaluate your current situation. And that's what we were asking those who want to use this framework to do. What are the current conditions? What are the current realities of folks in the community of the folks that you're serving? What are those realities? What does it look like to currently exist in Clackamas County? Then belonging, right? What do people want? When you think about longing, it's like, oh, I long for this, I long for something kind of it's sort of future oriented. What do I long for? So it's about desires, it's about what can make people's current realities even better. And then when you put belonging and belonging together, it's like, well, how can we make this happen? How can we implement the things that we already know? That community has already told us that this is what matters. How can we influence decision making so that we can ensure that people's current realities and their desires for the future are honored and acted upon? And in the framework, you'll see it's on page 30 or something in the report. It's really like, we really wanted to try to make this as approachable as possible, which is really sometimes hard for us as researchers because sometimes we're stuck in the word. And this topic is really grounded us in like, oh, we really want to give some understanding of how to do this in practice. So this is a framework that I think and I will be a way for folks to think about how your organization are you moving things forward in a way that honors the various aspects of belonging. So like I said, a lot of the ways in which we think and thought about belonging collectively with the steering committee and as we were out there talking to folks, really informed the heart of this study, which is the case study. I just want to take a moment just to read this quote. I am an anthropologist, and anytime I can speak an anthropologist visual presentation, I will lead up. I'm very famous anthropologist, and share this beautiful sentiment here that the stories people tell are deeply intertwined with their sense of justice and belonging. To understand these narratives is to engage with their struggle for justice. So, what we're saying here is that the power of people's experiences, the power of people's narratives and stories, in other words, the power of qualitative data, is essential if we're working towards equity and justice. Like, it's essential. We have in chapter one, a pretty decent length section that's called the power of qualitative data. And we wrote that section because we wanted to give folks an understanding, but also the language to get behind qualitative data, to understand its power, and to convince and influence others to really understand its power. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it is and how it can be used. So the case studies are really our and our steering committee members, because they are the ones who collected this data in their communities, is really our strong, I would say, like, just we want to push power stories. So this is what we do in this section, and we there were 10 case studies that were completed, and we're going to group them into these 4 categories. Newly arrived, always right here, navigating essential institutions and dominant involvement in community belonging. I'll go over them. I'll go over them a little bit, but again, there's a lot of rich data in chapter 6, which is the case study chapter. And I encourage you to read it, but I will give some very high level findings that came out of some of these case studies. Oh, I guess I talked now. Okay. Okay, newly arrived. Experiences, these were there were 2 case studies here. These were experiences that largely kind of revolved around experiences of immigrants who settled in Clackamas County. The first one in this category was called Memory Migration, Voices of Latin Communities from Mount Hood. I want to just, before I talk about, just talk very briefly about this case study, I just want to say that I want to recognize that Latin communities have been in Oregon for a very long time. So we decided to put this case study in newly arrived because we really wanted to highlight what was what Latin community members in Mount Hood were telling our steering committee member through interviews, which was patterns of fairly recent migration, probably the latest dating back to the 1970s. And I just want to say that this migration is not static. There's a pretty robust movement of folks. Some folks have been there since the 70s. Some folks are newly arrived. So that is kind of the reason why we felt that this particular case study was really speaking to those newer folks who are arriving in Clackamas County. I do want to make a shout out to chapter 5 of the report, which has a pretty in-depth, it's a pretty in-depth historical section where we talk about the histories of Indigenous, Black, Latin, and Chinese communities in Clackamas County, and particularly talking about the Latin section does talk about how Latin folks have been here even before the sort of mark of arrival of white settlers. So I think I would really encourage you to also check out that chapter. So the memory migration case study is really about understanding belonging from a Latin perspective and really understanding that it is belonging is a sense of home and feels like being part of an extended family. We heard a lot of barriers that community members experience. We heard a lot of challenges around navigating employment, navigating schools, navigating English language curriculum, and a lot of challenges and fear of interacting with the state. However, a lot of these anxieties and fears and challenges are in a way mitigated because of this sense of belonging and home that is created in that community, because of these familial connections. So the case study is really emphasizing the power of community, of supporting community, and supporting community events, because we attended several, community events in that area, and it was profound to see how important those events are in connecting folks. Another case study in this section is around immigrants seeking employment, Chinese and Latin communities, challenges with the job search. This was a survey that one of our steering committee members developed. And we learned a lot from this survey. We learned that finding employment is essential for belonging. We learned that job seekers want to be employed in the county and want to have stable employment so that they can stay in the county. There was across all communities that we worked with, there was some really strong desire to be in Clackamas County. There was people really like it here. It's the beauty, the nature, that those aspects really came out, but there was a sense that I would be in Clackamas County. We learned that social networks are crucial for a job hunt, especially for those unfamiliar or new to seeking jobs in the area, and peer support is particularly desired, especially for folks who, for language may not be English and who are sort of newer residents. There's a big struggle for looking for jobs that folks shared in the survey, but also job mobility, so moving up in an organization. We heard that immigrant job seekers tend to often get stuck in typically often entry-level positions that might be hard to move up. And so there's this frustration around that. And there were a lot of, we heard about a lot of barriers to what folks are experiencing on the job search, and even very specific things, like when I put in an application, the person who I want to put as a reference, they don't live in the United States, so their phone number is longer than 10 digits. I have nowhere to put their phone number on a job application. Right. There was, of course, experiences like my advanced degree sometimes overseas that I received isn't considered valuable or valid here. And that's a problem. So a lot of these barriers that we've heard, I don't just wanna, it's not all doom and gloom. You'll see in the report that every case study, we talk about the reality. So what I just told you now are some parts of that reality. We also talk about community desired solutions. So in this case study, for example, there's lots of examples of solutions that we present. Okay. I want to talk about small business owners. Right, there were three of this. The small business owners, ambition of small business owners, BIPOC immigrants doing business, the building community. And there's a lot of interesting overlaps between this community engagement and the job seekers employment engagement, because peer-to-peer networks, social networks are really, really important. And they're important for BIPOC immigrant business owners. They rely heavily on social networks to navigate really complicated bureaucratic systems. Within these networks, they'll share resources, they'll become mentors, there's lots of networking opportunities, as well as there's lots of emotional support. It can be very challenging to start your own business as an immigrant. There's a clear message to the county, like the county government, that they need to provide small business owners with more support, better access to information, and often support is often how to deal with challenging and at times racist clients. Right, even support at that level, like we heard quite a bit about that. Okay, I'm gonna kind of move along a little bit quicker here. Always been here. these were case studies that focused on Black and Indigenous communities in Clackamas County. So when I talk about the Indigenous case study, conditions for safety, Native communities' desires for belonging. I'm going to share with you what we learned about safety from a Native perspective. So safety looks like the presence of 5 things from the folks that were on this engagement. Relationships and reciprocity, honoring Indigenous cultures and languages, stability, authentic representation, and community power. So when we talk about relationships and reciprocity, things that came up during that engagement were neighbors who look out for each other, sharing resources, time, energy, and community events. Honoring Indigenous cultural knowledge. Things that came up that really connected people to a sense of safety were things like an accurate portrayal of Native history, cultural awareness for adults and children, practicing traditions and ceremonies. In terms of stability, safety means financial freedom, access to affordable housing, access to healthcare and traditional medicine. For authentic representation, it means my whole identity is seen and understood by people who are represented. And for community power, we have decision-making power, and we have community ownership. Yeah, this is all like, I'm gonna say this a lot, read the report. It's a lot more information in there. The second case study in this was Black histories and visibility strategies of Black historians and communities. These were interviews with Black historians and community members. We learned a lot from this. Many Black folks struggle with disconnectedness, and I talked about. Interestingly, Black folks living in rural areas use more expansive and creative methods to find their communities. They form connection to other cultures, so cross-cultural connection was really important, particularly with Black family community. Safety was a concern. There was a strong desire for Clackamas to have dedicated spaces that visualize Black culture, Black history, physical spaces where Black people and other people of color can gather, support each other, have discussions. And many noted that community connection, acceptance, and more importantly, familiarity are necessary to survive in Clackamas County. When it comes to the third area, navigating essential institutions, there was an engagement around teaching and equity, supporting BLL, BIPOC, and LGBTQ families. Folks in this engagement did share that there is an appreciation of what's happening in schools and in school districts to support BIPOC, immigrant, and LGBTQ students, but these are a starting point and they need to be more supported. So things that were appreciated are things like student and staff affinity groups, leadership conferences for various BIPOC groups, honoring Heritage Month and cultural events, library books with authors from multiple BIPOC backgrounds, initiatives to hire more BIPOC teachers. But then a lot of that engagement was educators sharing experience in the break room, where very little was done to address it in conference schools. One of the strongest concerns out of that engagement was lack of culturally diverse curriculum. And the desired solutions, right? School and school systems education is a big one. There's a lot to think about and tackle here. But the desired solutions really were around outreach and engagement with families, more training, more equity and racial justice training for educators and administrators, as well as more diverse curricula. Mental health support came up a lot. Diversification of the workforce and equitable policies and processes. So a lot of information came out of this case study about barriers, but also a lot of great ideas for how to address them and what are some community desired solutions. We talked a bit about students, so the next one that I want to just briefly mention is amplifying BIPOC youth voices, desires for harm reduction in schools. So this was the setup, this one came out of the setup Clackamas event that we held next door. BIPOC youth experiences of racism, microaggressions, slurs, and hate crimes while in school are considerable. The adults who offer students the most support are BIPOC teachers. Youth stressed the need for the adults to be just as involved in their organizing and advocacy efforts as they are. And there was a strong need and desire, again, for mental health support in school. Okay. The last case study in this section, navigating social institutions, is around talking about health and wellness, Black and Native reflections of health systems. So in this engagement, we invited patients and providers to identify Black and Native to come and talk about their experience in the health system. And again, there was a lot of challenges that folks shared about how difficult it is to find providers for their local background, how difficult it is to find affordable healthcare, how they so appreciate when providers take a whole person holistic care approach, when they ask questions about their cultural background, their religious practices, when they use the correct pronouns, and when they know about and practice trauma-informed care. When it comes to provider experience of the workplace, of the system itself, we heard a lot about consistent racialized aggression. We heard a lot about workplaces are often driving away providers because of this toxic environment and cultural discrimination. And we heard providers again call for more holistic, family-focused, whole health approaches. And we heard from both providers and patients for the need for greater workforce diversity across demographics, race, ethnicity, gender, identity, sexuality, disability, and language. There's a lot in here, y'all, so really, really good. Okay, I'm talking about the last one, dominant involvement in community belonging. The three of us attended 18 community events in Clackamas County. And we learned a lot about what it takes to organize community events. And in the report, we kind of present these findings on like this table matrix thing, where we talk about what are some elements that are really fundamental, really necessary for a good community event. And those are community vision, resource sharing, and technical assistance. And then we talk about, okay, there are certain events that we went to that were organized by the dominant, like Clackamas County, for instance, where community was invited. But this was definitely like a government organized event. Then there are events that are community led, community organized, but where there's a collaboration between community and the dominant helps with some of the back end administrative work to really make sure that the event goes well and make sure all permits and all the sort of the nitty-gritty details are taken care of. And then the third type of community event was community led. There's really no dominant involvement. It was community led. It was like a family kind of feeling to it. And we talk about like the spectrum of community events and what they entail in terms of like what does technical assistance look like, what does research sharing look like across the different types of events. The last case study is about removing obstacles for community-based organizations supporting culturally specific and responsible services. We talked or convened community-based organizations that serve Clackamas County residents several times. And we learned a lot, particularly about the very tense relationship that communities, organizations have specific to Clackamas County, the government agency. So this case study is really about that relationship, right? There was a few things came out of those convenings, right? The concentration of power at the county, the uneven and equitable decision-making, data gatekeeping, funding challenges at the county, and a lot of really powerful solutions from a PDO perspective came out of that case study. So for instance, the county should facilitate and convene collaboration between direct service providers. The county should be a funder. The county could sign on to grant opportunities to write letters of support. The county can do a little bit of a better job of becoming familiar with what local CEOs do and the services that they provide. So things like that came out of this particular case study. Okay. I'm going to move on to what is probably going to inform hopefully a lot of our discussion after I'm done. Because like Andre said, our research study is not just to present data, but it's to do something with that data. And in this case, it's to present call to action, to move forward what community is telling us needs to be moved forward. So the call to action that you'll see in the report, and then I'll just briefly go over here, emerged from deep experiential data combined with a very in-depth aggregation of population level quantitative data to support, right, many of these calls to action. Essentially, these calls to action can be thought about as pathways for advancing belonging. So we have 7. And these are the titles of the call to action. Bipoc history of the future. This call to action is really about restoration of and truth telling about BIPOC history. It's about deferring to communities both harmed and erased, and deferring to them about strategy, goals, and desires for the future. It's really about making sure that first of all, it's about recognizing that so much BIPOC history that is specific to and connected to Clackamas County is not being told and is erased. And we need to really engage in some pretty deep truth telling about that. And why is history being erased, and how can we do better at telling the history of BIPOC communities? And connect, right, with museums, with libraries, with schools, to be spaces where these conversations and this visualization can happen. Peer-to-peer support systems, we've heard across the case studies, right, and the power of social networks, the power of peer learning and connection. So this has to be a call to action, right? Space, time, and opportunity for BIPOC communities to gather, share, address concerns, and strategize on how to improve their situation in culturally and linguistically appropriate ways. In the report, we talk a lot about different ways that the dominant can support peer-to-peer networks. Actually, across all of these call to action, we talk about what will it take for the dominant to support all of them. Diverse workforce and leadership, resources and opportunities in various languages for training, apprenticeship, and applying for jobs, well-resourced recruitment efforts, and pathways for advancement for employees capable of providing culturally and linguistically specific services. I'm seeing moves. We're seeing moves on this in terms of like recognizing that if you're a bilingual, Spanish speaker, for instance, that you should be paid according to the specific skill. Because oftentimes what we found is that folks who do, for instance, speak Spanish are getting pulled into like translating and not getting compensated for it. Okay, I just talked about community events, so we have a call to action that's specific to community events and resource sharing. Leveraging space for community building, establishing long-term partnerships, and dominant institutions supporting with logistical, administrative, and technical assistance, as well as resource sharing. That's kind of what I told you about earlier about what does it mean for the dominant to be involved in community building and supporting communities and organizing. Again, I talked about CEOs and many of their concerns, we have a call to action that's specific to supporting community-based organizations. So, again, this is largely directed at Clackamas County. So funding, convening, and contracting with CEOs, recognizing that CEOs have the relationship, solutions, and track records to their community members. Again, in the report, we have a lot more like sort of prescriptive, like ways in which you can support the sentiment of this all act. Students and hires for change, training for staff and faculty on raising of equity, diverse teacher workforce, and mental health resources for students and staff. And then the last call to action is institutional diversity, equity, inclusion, compliance, and harm reduction. Reinstate the Office of Equity and Inclusion at Clackamas County. Until that happens, continue doing institutional DI work, and what that means is maintain and build capacity so that your organization or the institution is in compliance with federal funding pathways. By that, we're specifically talking about Title 2, 6, and 9. Developing and implementing data equity strategies. So for instance, making sure that when you are collecting kind of more population level data, that you have a strategy for disaggregation of race and ethnicity, language. Workplace harm reduction, so that BIPOC employees are not entering into a toxic workplace, that they're supported at the workplace. And public commitment to recognizing BIPOC histories and contributions. Okay. That resolved.
I mean, one more time, well, leave it up there for a second. I mean, feels as a community resident. Thank you, Mira.
Page 161 of the report is a more detailed description of this all action.
Thank you, Mira.
You're welcome. So when you do all this information, here's our ideas. But the first thing that I want to provide space for is there's already work happening around many of these calls to action. So, Tori, I would love to invite you to.
Didn't realize that your email meant this level of participation. So I am up here because one of the sort of many things that came out of the work that you all were doing was us as a county trying to figure out where people were doing this work so that we could figure out how to provide the contacts and the information to make all these great things come together so that people can kind of understand what's going on in the county. So a group of several grassroots equity groups, which I'm gonna make more people uncomfortable because Bruce is with me here. Because Bruce points that and his mother really points that response racism was one of the first groups that we connected with. Really to start to begin to support each other, because one of the things that we learned was that we didn't know what we were doing. Right, we didn't know what each other was doing. We didn't know that we could be supporting each other. We were hoping events at the same time. That just makes it hard when we already have a fragmented, small population of folks that want to connect, but either become overwhelmed, confused, and then it just becomes even more difficult when we're trying to be helpful. So we put together this Clackamas County Equity Coalition.
It doesn't exist within the framework of any of these systems, it's just our groups, we get together. Somebody has Zoom, so we have the Zoom link, and we just meet, network, discuss, figure out how to support each other's groups. And one of the things that came out of that is we host these quarterly trainings that we invite all of our members to attend. We try to find things that bubble up from each of our different groups and then put our resources and networking skills together to figure out how we can help people in these different groups like learn these areas. The next one that we are hosting is actually next Thursday. We moved our meeting, we're gonna host it this Thursday. Well, again, because we had networks where we realized that would be a bad idea, so we moved it. But it really aligns nicely with what we are all here for today, which is to figure out how to start implementing these calls to action. So we have a panel that we put together that are different individuals that are doing work in a lot of these areas that show up in call to action. They're doing work in workforce, doing work in education, healthcare, housing. They just talk about what their work looks like and how it informs their work. And hopefully it'll give people a chance to understand what that work looks like. Recognize that it's not scary, because there are definitely people out there that they hear some of the words that have been shared and they need to shut down. They don't realize that it's going to directly impact their own lives and their own ability to receive high quality care, their own ability to get housing on a regular basis. Like I just watched somebody sit around for a month trying to figure out how they could go living in their car tomorrow. Right? Like that's not something, that's not a place where I want to be. So figuring out how we can make our resources better, how we can reduce all the barriers so that everybody has the ability to thrive instead of surviving in Clackamas County is what our groups are about. So we are inviting folks to attend the panel, it's gonna be up in the Lake Studio. I brought some flyers with QR code, I'll leave them in the back so that as folks are exiting the room, they can pick one up if they want to attend. Again, it's on the same time next week, and I'm gonna give it back to for the rest of the things.
I was gonna do the rest of it, but I don't like talking for this one, so I'm gonna actually pass it over to others who will walk us through next step, but thank you all so much for listening.
I do like to talk to you, so. We'll do the rest here. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, to all the community members organizing. It's, that's the goal of this work, right? Is that, we have start building shared tables, shared work. I also want to acknowledge our steering committee members. I said a lot of them could not be here tonight. If you feel comfortable standing up, I would invite you to stand up if you were, one of our steering committee members, so that we can all. I can't thank it enough. These folks were incredible to work with, and one of the really exciting things about research justice is that everybody thinks that you have to have a PhD to be a researcher to do this stuff. And so much of our time together was saying, no, you have questions, you have strategies, you have solutions, let's do it. That's what you gotta do, let's do it. And so it was so amazing. Thank you all. And what an honor to spend this much time with you all and learn about you and your community. So thank you so much. I'm gonna go back to the few steps that we have going on. So here's what we're gonna do. We do have some strategizing meetings we'd love to offer to all the funders. And any other community groups just to give like to meet with us. We're gonna offer a number of 1 hour slots to start that discussion with those folks and help them understand any questions they may have and the data. So we will be in touch with you all, but if you are a community group or CBO or another organization that was a part of this process, feel free to email us at publications coalitioncommunitiescholar.org, and we'll get back to you about scheduling some time so that we can have a little bit of one-on-one time together. But even more exciting to me is the strategy that we heard a lot of here from the community that was like, you can't just leave these call to actions and walk away, right? Like help us organize. So here's what we're gonna do. there is a QR code here. It's also on the landing page of the report. So when you download the report, you can also click that and take that survey. Between now and the end of the calendar year, we're going to aggregate all of the results of that survey. And what that survey is about is asking folks, which call to action are you advancing in the community? Give us some examples of how you're doing that work. And then in 2025, we're gonna bring folks together in Zoom meetings around the similar calls, around the similar actions that you're already doing. So that you can meet other community members, other organizations who are committed to the same call you're advancing, and we can talk about approaches and strategies. So that's sort of our way of trying to kick off mobilizing these calls to action and bringing folks together. So please fill out that call to action survey if you feel so called to get more involved with organizing. This is both for community and for government institutions. You know, as our report with the dual belonging framework was the same way, right? We both have roles in this game. Let's get together, but we will have separate spaces and collective spaces for both community and the dominant to strategize around the different calls. The last thing that I don't think is on here, but we are going to put a longer, more detailed presentation on our website, or I'm sorry, probably on our YouTube page, one of those, our communications manager. Oh, shout out to Ben, our communications manager. We're on leave and came back to a flurry of requests from Mira and Kanya and I, and just stepped up. It was also Clackamas County residents, so hold that down. But we will put on that presentation as well, so that you're welcome to screen that presentation with anyone in your organization or your community if you like. That way you have